Hello and welcome to another Tabletop Games Blog Saturday review.
As the first two sons of Adam and Eve, a lot of responsibility had been laid upon our shoulders. We were a farmer and a shepherd, who were to offer our harvested grains and livestock to God. We were never sure if either of us was in His favour. So we carried on and made wilder and wilder boasts about our gifts to our Lord, until it was too much, and one of us struck down the other. We were like Cain and Abel, by J.L. Reid from Bent Pin. So here's a game that has ambitions on a biblical scale. Yet its boasts are rammed into nothing more than a small mint tin, which creates an odd dichotomy for this two-player trick-taking game. I always felt that great things can come in tiny packages, but to set your game against an origin story that is second to only the beginning of Earth itself, life itself even, is bold indeed. So you can probably understand why my interest was piqued when the designer approached me and showed me the rules. I was immediately sold on the fact that, like Cain and Abel, would come in a mint tin. I love mint tin games, and I've seen many different ways to squeeze the most out of such a physically limited space. Yet here isn't just a mint tin game, but a trick-taking game as well. With my excitement about this recently burgeoning genre, there were now two reasons to take a closer look. Those two reasons were quickly joined by a third when I read the rules. I saw that the cards have two different numbers at each end, which represent two different suits, and that you can play cards facing either way, making these cards effectively multifunctional. Like Cain and Abel, is completely different to everything I've seen before, for these three reasons alone. However, being new and mixing up different genres and mechanisms doesn't make for a good game. Yet I couldn't wait for the review copy to arrive and for me to get the game to the table. Let me give you a very brief outline of how Like Cain and Abel works. The deck of 18 cards is shuffled and dealt evenly to both players, but not until after you've removed 3 cards unseen. One of them goes in the middle as the so-called offering stone, and one goes in front of each player representing their offering basket. That creates little uncertainty as to what cards are in play. After that, players choose one of their cards and place it face down in one of the 2 possible directions in front of them. The side facing towards the opponent is their bet on which colour they will win the most tricks off, and the number are the points they stand to win this round if the colour prediction is correct. So if you place a high value card into your offering basket, you stand to gain a lot of points, but then you have also one less high value card available to win your tricks with. That's your first challenge as a player. The situation is made a bit more complicated by the fact that players secretly draw a random favour token before they place their bet. This token decides if players get any points at all this round, irrespective of whether their bet is won or not. So if the favour token goes against you, you don't have to play a high card. Your main goal is to prevent your opponent from winning their bet. There's also a boasting phase where you can bluff about what bet you placed, but let's ignore that for now. All it does is allow you to gain the so-called last act token, which lets you remove the points of one of your opponent's won bets. I recommend you don't worry about it in your first few games, there's enough going on as it is. The core game is all about using your hand of cards wisely. You want to win the most tricks of the colour you placed face down at the beginning of the round. That is, you don't only want to win more tricks of that colour than your opponent, but also more tricks than the opposite colour that you win. It's not as easy as it seems, but then life for Cain and Abel wasn't either. To complicate matters further, each trick consists of 3 cards and there's no need to follow suit. All that matters is that subsequent cards played into the trick have a higher number value on them. That's where a small element of ladder climbing comes in, adding yet another mechanism to this already eclectic mix. However, the mix of trick-taking and ladder climbing is actually very interesting. The thing is, if the player who's playing the second card has a higher value in their hand, irrespective of color, they are forced to play it. The third card is optional though, so because cards have 2 different ends to them, you sometimes have to play a high value card of the opposite suit that you were planning to play it for. It is very possible for an opponent to tease out strong cards and waste them on tricks that you don't actually want. Like Cain and Abel is a weird game, but one that weirdly works. Players have no way of guessing what color the opponent placed into the offering basket, let alone if the opponent's favor token is in their favor. All you can do is win the most tricks of your chosen color, or failing that, make sure your opponent gets an even split of tricks so you ruin their bet. However, once you played the game a few times, you start to realize that there's a lot of depth to it. With practice you can play really skillfully. You do need to learn the deck of cards though. The numbers at opposing ends both go from 1 to 18, but they aren't symmetrical. So it's not like one end counts upwards from 1 to 18 and the other end down from 18 to 1. The numbers are jumbled up intentionally though. If there was a linear relationship, then it would be easy to choose which color to put in your offering basket. You simply choose whichever suit has the higher numbers. However, because the numbers are mixed up, your choice is a lot harder. You might end up with a hand that has an even split of strong cards of both suits. A lot of thinking and playtesting has gone into, like Cain and Abel, to get to this point. The only slight concern I have is with the random selection of favor tokens. It is possible for one player to only draw tokens that are against them, meaning that they will be unable to score any points whatsoever throughout the whole game. Of course, luck should even out over the 5 rounds that you play, but it is possible and something to bear in mind. I certainly have fallen in love with Like Cain and Abel. It's maybe not quite as epic as it makes out to be, but it's still a lot bigger than the small box it comes in. The game has found a special place in my heart. Even though there are some rough edges, like the rulebook's many different terms such as offerings, covenants, boasting and favor tokens, and the randomness of the just mentioned favor tokens, it is still very clever. It's a game I want to play a lot more because I can see that there is a lot more to it. It's a sort of game that you need to play a lot to really master. So if you want a trick-taking game that comes in a small box, plays relatively quickly, and clearly has a lot of new twists and a lot to offer, then please take a closer look at Like Cain and Abel. You could easily reap some huge rewards as a result.
Thank you for listening to this Tabletop Games Blog Saturday Review podcast. Please check the description below for links mentioned in this episode, as well as to the written version of this article on the blog. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, give us some stars or leave a review. Please also tell your friends about me, and if you want to offer financial support, check out my Patreon and Ko-fi pages, links to which you'll find in the blog at tabletopgamesblog.com. So thank you again for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.
This podcast was made possible by the generous help of my supporters. Royal Patron Sean Newman, Magic Champion John Risley, Castle Guards David Miller and James Naylor, Dice Masters Alex Bardi, Paul Grogan and Robin Kay, and Shining Lights Jacob Davis, Gavin Jones, Sarah Reed and Richard Simpson.